and you can find me on Twitter as Exchange Goddess. I'm joined by another one of our co-hosts.
My name is Teresa Miller, and I can be found on Twitter at 24/7 IT Connect.
And today we have a very special episode because we have a guest host filling in for Melissa, Trevor Potts, one of the writers from the Register. Trevor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Trevor Potts. You can find me on Twitter at the cake is _not_alive.
And our special guest today is John Martin. He is a data center architect for Independence Blue Cross. For those in the Northeast region, it's a pretty big healthcare facility. Sorry, that is a dog in the background. John, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us, a little bit more about what you do, and then we can start haggling you about the data center architect and how it possibly is a dead role.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on, of course. For about the last 16 years, I've been in mission-critical facilities, planning, design, build, support, basically any facet involved with the four critical elements of a data center, space, power, cooling, connectivity. So it's basically been kind of part and parcel of my career for going on 2 decades now. And in my spare time, I also serve on the board of directors for the AFCOM chapter based in the Mid-Atlantic region. And we are actually the country's largest chapter. So if you're not familiar with AFCOM, we're basically the country's largest affiliation of data center professionals.
Cool. So my first question is, how do you feel, or what do you think about when people say the data center is dead? I mean, the cloud's here, nobody needs a data center, you don't need a data center architect, but obviously you are one. You still have a job. Actually, I work with you. So, what's your take on that?
So, yeah, definitely a relevant statement because, the envelope is definitely shrinking. As far as enterprise organizations like Independence, have pretty much outsourced the model for data centers as far as the bricks and mortar element, the standalone, we own a facility model. The cost comparison between that old model and the new co-location provider models, I mean, there's really a huge gap between what a company would pay to own and operate its own data center and what we pay to a third-party provider for basically, capacity on demand.
So, with this shift, what's the role of the data center architect anymore? I mean, if you're not really managing, the cooling and power, and the generators, what do you do? I mean, I had people ask me that. I'm like, well, I don't know. Other than making sure you have enough racks, enough power board.
Yeah, so there is still capacity. Yeah, good call. There actually is still, a box within the box. So we do actually have to have, the expertise to spec out power, space, cooling, connectivity, because like I had mentioned before we went on air, our disaster recovery facility, we do kind of act as a proxy for a few other health plans, equipment, and environments. So about 2 years ago, we moved in another plan to our disaster recovery site, and we didn't really have a lot of experience installing high-density blade enclosures, but one of the advantages to still having somebody like me around is being able to look at what you have in the room and say, okay, well, we're going to update the network cards on all the cooling units. We're going to, enclose that aisle where this tenant's going to live. We're also going to, chimney off all the cooling units and wind up slashing the energy utilization in the room by a factor of about 30%. So you have to have that sort of like applied expertise, I think, still within the realm, even though we've outsourced the bricks and mortar element. And plus,
so you're
also,
not bored.
No, not at all. In fact,
you're not bored at all.
No,
Yeah.
in fact, I've been, I will say I've been busier outside of the data center this year than inside because I also do project management as kind of like a liaison to facilities management. So we just finished a 6-month project that was like a 3-pronged thing, and it had about a $3.5 million budget, which consisted of an upgrade to single mode fiber for the company's 46-story headquarters in Center City, Philadelphia, providing basically dual 10 gig redundant uplinks to every single floor. We also had to upgrade, obviously, the switch chassis to accommodate, beefier bandwidth, power over Ethernet, stuff like that. So that was basically like a floor-by-floor assessment that we had to do. We were also collapsing 2 floors of raised floor down into one, and we basically built a new smart aisle, like an enclosed mission-critical area for the company's production footprint, which, admittedly is a small one within the corporate center because it's not a data center, but, we wanted to definitely make the whatever production hardware we had consistent and congruent with the data center sites.
So my next question then would be, what is your preference? I think we're talking primarily about co-location. What do you think about that versus like using a hosted service provider instead, where you might not have as much control over the surroundings or the hardware?
I have to say I definitely prefer the co-location model because, like you said, I mean, it does give you a little bit more in the way of flexibility. Like, I can do this stuff like plunking up a an aisle enclosure. I can upgrade intelligence on the cooling units, which I can't really do stuff like that at the production site. They are a LEED Tier 3 facility, so they have kind of like that green data center stamp on them already. So aside from the fact that it's a 10-year-old facility and the high-rated data center design from 10 years ago is a lot different than the basically build what you need, much more modular, scaled down approach that the same designated facility would get these days. So long answer to your short question basically would be like, I like door number 2.
So, couple of questions I have. You say that this is a 10-year-old facility. What kind of power density are you able to achieve per rack?
Well, they started day one, unfortunately, with only about a 40 watt per square foot density over a space of over 25,000 square feet, which in this day and age, I mean, if you were actually starting with just a greenfield construction, typically you wouldn't think of a density any less than about 100 to 150 watts a square foot capability. And in some cases you're seeing that footprint, that threshold exceeded because there are, the high density customers. There are people who want to squeeze 10 kilowatt loads in a single rack footprint, ludicrous speed basically. But right now with an MEP upgrade that we did there last year, they got it up to about a uniform density of 70 to 75 watts per square foot, which isn't totally, terrible, but, then again, with a space that large, it's a bit of a waste, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we've had trouble finding facilities, for example, that are able to provide anything more than about 30 kilowatts a rack, so yeah, that actually sounds more than reasonable. So the second question is, since you are sharing a facility, how do you deal with issues like physical security, some of which might require a lot of building up? Do you guys get the opportunity to build up in your side of the facility, or do you have to rely on the provider to provide you the physical security?
In both cases, we are beholden to the property managers for the physical security of the location. So for the production facility, it's a bit easy because they actually have armed security on premises 24 hours a day. They're physically located next door to a Pennsylvania State Police barracks. So, the security is basically, it kind of takes care of itself. On the other site, though, the disaster recovery site, again, you have the same type of round-the-clock security presence. They're not carrying guns, but again, our room, our parcel of space is card accessible, and very few people have access to those cards. There are a few facilities, people that have, obviously they need to have access to every room in the place. And in most cases, any visitors to the site are going to just basically be escorted in by security or one of the operators who staff the site round the clock.
So how do they separate that? I mean, and because I've seen a bunch of different security models, some of which are essentially, here's the card accessible area of the data center, it's yours, and then once in there, if you wanted to put in locked cages or locked areas behind which there are multiple cages, that's up to you.
Yeah.
Do you guys get that level of autonomy, or is that something that even matters as far as you're concerned?
Well, for the production facility, it's basically kind of like a one-size-fits-all space for the owner as well as any tenants that they have in the site. And they've reduced access drastically. I mean, even before we went to the outsource model, we basically kind of like sampled the breeze and said, well, you know what, most of the people in this data center really don't actually have to be in the room. And quite frankly, we'd like to free those people up to focus on their day jobs. Server admins don't necessarily need to rack and stack servers. SAN guys don't need to, run all the fiber optics, all the fiber channel stuff for the EMC arrays, etc. And in my particular case, the guys that were running the fiber when I arrived at Independence a few years back, I mean, looked like Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder were running the fiber. So really, they had no experience or expertise in the realm. They weren't rated installers or anything like that, so it was just kind of like, run along, go do your day job. And quite honestly, it was a bit of a rub. It was an uphill slog. Took about 18 months to 2 years to actually finally get them to buy into it. But really, like, the nail in the coffin was when we went and told everybody, hey, the data center is going to be 100 miles away. They were just like, well, great, that pretty much cements the deal. We never want to go to a data center ever again.
So it seems as though if there's enough, you have to have really good monitoring in place, and you'd have to have really great remote access tools, which some organizations struggle with. So do you feel that you guys do a really good job with all of that then?
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, the sites themselves are staffed around the clock. So there is not only just your mall cop sitting there kind of like zoning out to the screens. I mean, there are actually building engineers on shift that can respond, pretty rapidly to something, problem with a chiller, problem with, a UPS or anything like that. But in most cases, we have our own power train and dedicated infrastructure, so that stuff's on the air. It's connected to our network. Somebody like me gets a page, gets an alert, if something goes bump in the night. So there's no real degradation in service in spite of the geographic distance.
There is a difference, though, from my experience with colos. In my previous job, we paid for certain levels of services. And we'd have the air walkthrough and the stack. But if we had a problem, we'd ask them to go check the servers for us. And I was getting used to that, and I came to Independence. I don't even do that anymore. Now, recently I've been working on a project, and I'm kind of having these flashbacks. We have these equipment in there, and when there's a problem, it's a little frustrating because you have to coordinate. Technicians coming in, you got to coordinate with the facility, you got to coordinate with you. It's just getting everything racked and stacked. And when there's a problem, going through the different channels. But at the end of the day, I do find that it's a lot easier to do my job because I don't have to worry about the server physically.
Right.
And just with equipment, I can just say, you know what? Hey, why don't you send that to John Martin because he handles that, and I want to handle the application. Once the server's powered on, just let me know. And let me know how I connect to it. And I think that just makes my job easier. And it lets him do his job. And we're not really crossing paths, but we still work together. as a team. So he tells me what's going on, and sometimes, if I know what's going on, I'll tell him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it all kind of works itself out, really. I mean, once you get kind of like used to the rhythm, and I certainly had to adjust to the fact that, oh my gosh, the data center is not right here in the backyard. It's no longer a 10-minute stroll up North Broad Street. Definitely it was a learning curve, but fortunately the remote people that I have to rely on, are consistently reliable. They've proven themselves competent, with the exception of one minor ripple that's arisen in the past couple years. They outsourced our computer ops staff to like a third-party firm, and we've had some. It's been definitely a learning curve. Within like the first real month of them being in there live, I had somebody install a microwave oven in a Halon zone. So, this is kind of like the contractor that you don't necessarily want to be staffing your mission critical facilities. So, I mean, the prospect of somebody who can't really make that kind of judgment call and be an adult, you'd have a hard time letting this person walk your dog, much less sit in your company's multi-million-dollar installation. So, I mean,
they needed to cook their Hot Pockets.
I didn't think you could put those kind of items inside a data center, because I used to get yelled at if I had my drink. Like, oh no, you can't go in there.
Wow. Or boxes, no paper or boxes in the data center.
Yeah,
right. Cardboard, fire hazard, another big no-no.
Yep. Well, even the dust, dust from boxes.
I'd be careful with my heel.
Yeah. So let's put a microwave in there.
Let's put a kitchen. I start grilling burgers in the data center.
Yeah.
It was an interesting phone exchange.
Well, fortunately, it probably didn't take much to move it.
Yeah.
Now, would you say, I mean, there's definitely a trend in using colo facilities. I think it's increasing. Do you see it increasing? And I see some, some organizations thinking, no, I think we're going to come back on-prem. What's the trend? You're the data center expert.
It's shifted out. For sure. I mean, I think I'm certainly not unique in the fact that I've realized that the capex involved, as well as the depreciation schedule on a $50 to $60 million hole in the ground. If you don't have to deal with that 10 to 15 year payback period, and you can basically just take all of your stuff, move it into a prefab site, spec out what you want. Have them basically tell you that bandwidth and power density, sky's the limit, and they're going to give you probably a much more reasonable economy of scale than what you would get as a property manager, without a doubt. I mean, I have yet to see anybody. I mean, certainly, we being in the healthcare insurance business, anything could happen. I mean, with the Anthem breach affecting 80 million customers, somebody could come in next week and suddenly say, well, you know what, our biggest customers are not comfortable with the fact that we outsource, company data, et cetera, to a third-party data center provider. And guess what, guys? You're going right back out to Valley Forge, and here's your building. Anything could happen. You never know. It's such a shifting climate.
But I bet you they have iPhones and they use iCloud backup. And they store all sorts of contacts on Apple servers, which aren't backed up.
True.
So I have a couple of questions about sort of some of the emerging technologies that I see in the data center and stuff that I've been sort of working with or at least experimenting with. And I'm interested to see whether this is penetrated into the enterprise where people with proper budgets exist.
Did you just say proper budgets?
Proper budgets.
Proper budgets. Oh, Trevor, that's such a
tweet it.
Yeah,
tweet it.
You would be shocked what I accomplished.
Proper budget.
Smallest amount of money. But okay, so the facilities that I get to play with, I don't have staff running around 24 hours a day, and even when there are staff there, they're not necessarily the brightest CFLs in the package. You know what I mean? So I've taken to, and I swear I'd never use this term, but I've jumped on the Internet of Things bandwagon, and I have a bunch of networked sensors that are starting to show up in my data center, data center. And the other addition to my Internet of Things has been a telepresence robot and a drone. And the telepresence robot actually works just gloriously for when somebody's doing something stupid. I can drive it over there and go, no, 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 it's the green wire. And the drone actually works really well because it can go up and look at things that, you know, maybe the telepresence robot can't, but usually when there's a sensor going off in a weird place, and it took forever to map this with what amounts to consumer-level technology. I'm wondering if you guys have started even testing, you know, experimenting even as a thought project with any of these technologies.
Sure. So just quickly off the top of my head, there's stuff as far as little modular sensors that can be pretty much instantaneously deployed anywhere. You know, we've dealt with literally in the last month to 6 month period, you know, stuff ranging from physical security, so magnetic locks, contact, vibration sensors, fire, power monitoring, moisture detection. So, you know, of course, you know, within a data center, you have chilled water systems in some cases. There's, you know, water in the room. So either from your HVAC plant or from, you know, the likelihood that you have probably a dry pipe or pre-action sprinkler system inside the facility. So water is near and all around the data center, so you have to have a way of intelligently monitoring it. And in fact, you know, like some of the things that I also do as far as outside the data center, I kind of help our facilities management folks, and we actually deployed an interesting little leak detection suite. It's a little PoE sensor that's only about 3 inches by 3 inches. It's a little chameleon thing. It has its own relative humidity and temperature sensor, which are always, you know, compelling little things you'd like to see in either a mechanical room or a telco closet or something like that. You know, that's not mission critical data center space, but, you know, in our immediate past, at our company headquarters in Center City, Philadelphia, we had a fairly sizable water leak. So, I mean, we kind of stepped up from the IT side and said, hey, you know, here's a little thing. Did you know you could do this? And they're actually sort of, you know, sitting up and taking notice because, you know, you send them a link and say you can log into this thing. And by the way, it's sitting in the 22nd floor telco closet if you want to go take a look at it. You know, so.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah. It's a little, yeah, it's about a little orangish square about this big. And the interesting thing is that it's got 2 outputs, so you can basically choose your, you know, pick your poison. You could make air particulate analysis. You could make airflow. If the airflow stops, obviously it's a bad thing. You know, it could be moisture detection, could be, you know, just run-of-the-mill heat sensors. So it's, you know, there's a lot of things. You know, energy efficiency is definitely one of those things too, because we had an interesting little pilot program about 18 months ago at our DR site for power over Ethernet lighting, which was interesting. We worked with Cisco, and basically it's the same if you walk into any conventional office space and you look up, you have the 2 by 2 foot overhead drop ceiling tiles, and the lighting fixtures fit within that same footprint. We took a group of about 60 really old 4-foot fluorescent fixtures, and we quartered the physical lighting down to 15 fixtures that were all just LED, high efficiency. They had no AC power coming into them. It was basically a piece of Cat6 cable, and each light fixture has, you know, the capability to be static IP addressed, so you could control it. You can do, you know, programming. You can do fade, rise. You can blink it. So pretty interesting little project. And the overall energy wound up being shrunken by a factor of about 90%. So there was in one part of the data center close to about a 4 kilowatt load that was shrunk down to about 400 watts, because basically, you know, PoE, your max threshold on like a PoE plus switch port is about 25.4 watts. So, you know, it would range up to that level, or if you were dimming the light, it'd be much less. So interesting little things, you know, a lot of things that are possible with the Internet of Things.
Yeah, that's cool. What about self-healing then? We talked a lot about monitoring and things like that. Anything that might be able to automate the repair of issues?
Nothing that we have.
You don't have any robots running around your data center swapping out drives?
Mm-mm.
You don't have any unicorns that do the work? I thought
No.
we had a couple unicorns on staff.
No.
Yeah.
Or saw one flying around.
I'd love to get a drone. I know, actually, believe it or not, building security in Philly are looking to, you know, try to get something like that spun up to kind of survey the exterior of the building, try to, you know, do optimal positioning of their IP cameras and things like that, especially with, you know, the Popapalooza coming to Philly in September. You know, the whole city's on high alert, and we're basically going to be, you know, treating town like it's the zombie apocalypse. We've already been told that one of the days is you know, we're being told to treat it like a snow day. So, but the security folks are definitely very concerned, understandably so, because they're saying that at least, you know, another 1 million people could be present in Center City, Philadelphia during the 3 days that the Pope's there.
I won't be there that whole week and that Monday afterwards.
Oh,
Just
yeah?
saying.
I'm planning on staying well clear myself.
Yeah, 2 million people in the city? No, not a chance. I do not want to be in that mix.
I'm a train rider too, so I didn't get in on the lottery.
Yeah, I take the train. It's going to be absolutely crazy. But as we talk about, you know, the Pope coming into Philadelphia, that means our building. What happens to everybody? You know, and I guess from an IT standpoint, I know we have to make sure the systems are able to support all those VPN users. And, you know, that comes back to the network, you know, and the data center architect, you know, scaling out, making sure the capacity. I guess, you know, I know we're involved in it from a different aspect, but have you yourself, I mean, it's a planning for this, and I'm sure possibly other companies on Center City as well are probably thinking the same. How do we handle the load if everybody is trying to connect?
Well,
stay away from the Pope.
Well, there's no such thing as foolproof for sure. And, you know, in our immediate past, about, you know, a month ago, we actually saw, I mean, you know, this was, we basically use DWDM, so we have our own kind of like private dark fiber ring that connects 5 of our physical locations, our chief office locations, as well as our 2 data centers. And, you know, basically it was, you know, an overnight thing where storm activity took down one of the main fiber connections out to the data centers from the Center City headquarters. And then later on the same morning, again, the mathematically improbable cropped up again, and we lost connectivity briefly to the office space, you know, which resulted in the evacuation, and, you know, basically work groups had to sort of filter themselves out and head home. So, you know, definitely connectivity in this model of having your own sort of thing. We're facing almost the same decision as we did with the data centers a few years ago. Is it easier to run this large and very expensive and somewhat elaborate infrastructure on our own? Or is it easier to say, hey, I want to grab a couple 10 gig pipes from diverse providers, of which there are many, you know, Verizon, Comcast, whoever, you know, is it not easier to just simply, you know, take the same logic and outsource that? You know, we're kind of coming to the precipice of a decision like that, probably within the next year to 18 months.
Interesting. Trevor, any comments? You always seem really good comments regarding data centers from the SMB world versus the enterprise.
Well, actually,
But
I mean,
I think it's the same challenges.
the only thing really is that, I mean, it's not that different. I mean, he's describing a lot of the same challenges that we have and a lot of the same questions, but having a proper budget means that you have more options. I mean, we're doing the same things, but we're doing them with consumer level technologies. We're doing them, by literally scotch taping Raspberry Pis to the back of things and connecting up things. I mean, like, it's just, we are inventing or reinventing technologies that already exist, but are so new in the market that, they're out there with 1,000, 4,000, 10,000 times margin over the raw cost of the hardware, that there's no way that we can go buy the prepackaged stuff. And I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about, oh, well, there are multiple 10 providers, of which there are many. And it's like, no. In my world, we pay approximately, holy crap, what the hell, for 100 meg symmetrical pipe that we can use 50 megs of before we go over the magical limit where the fist of God squishes us. And there's no choices. There's that, or there's 10 times the holy God price. And, when you get up into dealing with 1 gig or 10 gigs worth of bandwidth, the cost per gigabit of bandwidth plummets. But when you are talking about, I need this to be faster than what cable or DSL can provide, but I can't get to a whole gig, you are in the mid-market, and mid-market IT is awful. And the solutions and choices that are available have been awful for my whole career. And so it's, on the one hand, there is extreme envy listening to Johnny talk about all of the things that he's going through. But there's a lot of recognition as well, where I sit here and I go, I think anybody who has done any data center work is going to see a lot of what they've had to do in what you're describing. And most of us just, maybe that twinge bitter that you seem to be able to describe it with so much ease and so little bitterness.
Well, we're near ending our time, so I want to thank John for joining us. This was a great conversation.
Thank you.
We also, just let everybody know that
you.
And Trevor, we're actually going to be at VMworld here at the end of the month. And John is completely unrelated to what you do, but we're going to be traveling to the biggest virtualization conference. August 29th, something like that. So look out for Teresa and I and Trevor. Walk around Moscone, San Francisco.
I still haven't showing up. Yeah, we're going to be there. I think one of the things that I just wanted to tack on to the end of this was for any of our viewers that are watching, especially if this is your first VMworld, take the time to reach out to any of your favorite companies or any of the companies that you're interested in that will be there. Beyond just what's being put on display at the booths or what is being discussed in the talks, there are a lot of parties and events and contests that are going to take place in and around VMworld. I know on the contest side, there are companies like VM Turbo and Catalogic that are giving away some really nice home labs. I know that there are a whole bunch of other contests that are going around, especially amongst the startups. So I mean, scour Twitter and look for just the hashtag VMworld. Any company that looks like they might be a startup, if they're going, there's a really good chance they got a cool contest you can be part of. And I bring that up mostly because the contests are a really good way to meet the right people and to bring up. How can I put this? It's a really quite great way to inject your use cases into the minds of the vendors, because it gives you a chance to talk to them and to say, hey, here's the problems I face.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as part of this contest, we could have a discussion about that. And this is something that a lot of people, especially in the SMB and mid-market space, always wish they could do. How do I get what I need in front of a vendor? Oddly enough, going to the vendor parties, going to participate in these contests, it gives you face time and mind share with the vendors that you have almost no other way of getting. And if you're the expert, or you're on Twitter, you're a member of the VMware community in some fashion, I think you're going to find getting hold of these vendors and getting that mind share very easy.
It is very easy. And we actually will have games running live.
Yes, current status from VMworld. I may or may not be there. I guess it depends on how some of the people are feeling, but hopefully we will have more bandwidth.
I hope so too, but you never know. It is 25,000 geeks all in one facility. Let's see how the network can handle it.
Something tells me that the bandwidth will still be better than mine here.
I don't know. I might have
the worst bandwidth.
It's like dial.
No matter what, we'll have fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be doing also Tech Field Day on Tuesday, so feel free to watch that as well. Some great delegates coming up. I think it's going to be a fun week. Lots of good things are going to happen, I hope. Especially, I think Tintry has some announcements coming out. I think,
yes.
Yes, I hear they have some big announcements. I've gotten a couple of newsletters.
Yeah, here very soon.
Yeah, and then I think Catalogic, definitely going to be there. Micron, I heard is going to have a really nice VCN demo again. With their VCN. I got the lecture on that demo. That is one of those things that, even if you don't know who Micron is, you don't care who Micron is, find them and look at this thing. It's nerd porn. Who doesn't know who Micron is? Yeah, definitely check out. And not just because I'm friends with Micron, they really do have a cool demo. Last year it was awesome, the VCN demo, but this is VCN 2.0 all flash. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Trying to think of some other really cool vendors from what I'm seeing on the Twitters that are going to be there. SolidFire is another one. I think they're having some hot party or something like that. I saw on the Twitters.
As a party too.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
Veeam, obviously, they always have their rooms. That's my shout to Rick. So we'll see if we make all the rounds, Teresa and I. We might be poofed out though. Be a long day. Okay, I think we've had a pretty long night. I want to thank everybody again for watching us. Thanks to our guests and our special co-host Trevor. And maybe we'll have you guys back. I think maybe a different topic. SMB versus tech, enterprise tech, something like that.
Can I bring a sport field?
And look for me at Data Center World in Baltimore, Inner Harbor in September. I'm going to be speaking on a panel about data center physical security, so it should be interesting.
Oh, awesome.
When's that again, Joe?
Oh, you would ask me the date.
Well, it's we're going to be on YouTube, so shameless plug. Bring it on.
Oh boy. Let's see. I can't actually find it, of course.
Come on, Outlook search is amazing. It always finds everything you need right away.
Bing.
Mm-hmm. September 20th to the 23rd.
Awesome. There's a shameless plug in there, right? No, that's great. Everyone has to have a plug. So thanks again, everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Really, really interesting. Have a great night.
Too.
Bye.
Take it easy.
See ya.